From the News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Barris here on a Wednesday. Was it raining when you came in?
Just a bit.
Okay, first morning it wasn't a torrential downpour, but still, it's a little wet out there. So sit back and join in the conversation. We're going to talk about a couple of, I think, very important issues right now in the city of Nashville with someone who's in the middle of all this. And one of them is going to be addressing where we stand right now on this whole soccer and NASCAR and Fairgrounds debate, okay, and what's happening with that. And I know many of you have been following that in the news. The other part of it is something that really, I think, is kind of taken a backseat this week anyway to that issue. And that is salaries for city employees and the fact that a study was done. I think I've got the details here. And the details came out, I think this past Monday, was it, with regard to city pay and what we're paying firefighters, police officers, teachers, things like this, and whether or not the city of Nashville, which I think we all can agree is a fantastic and remains an IT city, is it keeping up with peer cities that are similar in terms of what it's paying the folks who help run this city? We'll get into all that and take some of your phone calls at the number 737-7587 with Council Member Bob Mendes. Good morning to you, sir.
Morning, Nick.
Thanks for coming on.
No problem.
I should have thanked you when you first walked in. It was short notice, a lot going on, and they called, and you're willing to come on. It's because this show is like none other MorningLine. We just sit here. It's radio on TV, and we'll take calls, but I know it's been busy for you. Why don't we hit first, and I think a lot of people have interest in the NASCAR soccer issue, but let's talk about the salaries and what was learned in this study that was put together.
Sure. Well, we put together in one place information that shows that after the big downturn about 10 years ago, employee pay for Metro employees got squeezed, and they've never really recovered. And the bottom line is we're behind other cities, and it makes it hard for our employees to live in Nashville.
Now, other cities went through the same squeeze we did. You go back, as you said, 10, 12 years, and a lot of cities were tight. They cut back. Heck, same thing in the private sector,
Sure.
okay? Things have bounced back clearly. The city is booming. Why is it we're trailing behind? Have other cities then, in your opinion, peer cities, maybe you can name a few of them that you looked at, decided, okay, we're out of this economic rut. We're making more money. Let's increase salaries, and Nashville hasn't done that?
Well, that's definitely the case.
Okay.
And whether you talk to fire, police, teachers, bus drivers, the story is the same, that starting salaries are okay, but there's incredible compression where somebody who's been a Metro employee for 10 or 15 years just doesn't keep up with what they can make in a different city.
What is the adverse effect of that? Is that the loss of qualified individuals who have been here say, look, I can make more money elsewhere?
Well,
how's it hurting the city? How's it hurt the public?
I mean, first of all, it's a terrible thing as an employer to train people, get them a bunch of skills, and then see them walk out the door because of a want of a few dollars. Squeezing employees on pay leads to squeezing constituents on services. There's no getting around that.
Okay, so schools perhaps suffering. We've already heard from firefighters and police in terms of overtime, staffing, and all of those issues, in terms of security and all of that they don't have the resources they need.
Yeah, and if ultimately costs more money to, with the fire department, for example, they're already so slim that if somebody goes on family leave or needs to be out for any amount of time, you can't leave the spot on the fire truck empty.
Right.
You have to pay somebody overtime.
Which is way more than having a new staffer, right?
And having no flexibility in the fire department, for example, is just very counterproductive and borderline unsafe.
All right. Now, I don't know where you work. I know you're an attorney, and I guess you work for yourself. You're in a firm. I'm in a firm. A firm. Okay. So do you get a cost of living adjustment as time goes on with you?
Well, I mean, I need to. I'm sort of in an eat what you kill environment. Okay. I need to work in order to make.
All
money.
right. I understand. You have cases, and it depends on the field.
But there, there's a 50-person staff at the firm I'm at, and people need to be able to keep up with cost of living.
Right.
It's fundamentally cynical to not pay your employees employees a fair wage for a fair day's work.
I think most would agree with that. All right, so the bottom line, based on the study, I guess we should have known this, that these employees that we talked about, firefighters, police officers, bus drivers, general workers, have not received a cost of living adjustment in 6 of the past 7 years?
I'll rely on what's in the report, but over the last 10 years, the employees have very frequently gone without a cost of living increase, and also without what's called step increases, where they can keep up with their seniority. And this is what's caused a compression at the middle part of the pay scale, where if you go from being a 9th year teacher to a 10th year teacher, what you see in a raise is almost nothing.
Meanwhile, housing prices skyrocketing.
Right.
All of it. I don't get it, Bob. All these things being built, these condos, where you can get yourself a beautiful 700 square foot condo for $500,000, which is absurd, but it's downtown, so you do this. Who's got the money to be buying this stuff? I'm serious, because it's not the folks that aren't getting, it's not city employees, I guess. I don't know, maybe they live outside the city. Where's this money coming from? Who's buying all this stuff that's being built in the city? I'm just curious. That's a little off point, but I'm just curious. I don't get it.
I mean, we continue to have a lot of growth from out of town.
Okay, but when they get here, what kind of jobs are they getting that's affording them to pay it? And a lot of them are youthful people that are buying it. So is mom and dad picking up the tab? Yeah. I don't get it.
Well, sounds like you got the answer there.
Seriously, I just don't get it. Who's paying for all this stuff unless they're just going into debt up to their neck?
Part of what I do professionally, I think a lot of people are willing to go in debt up to their neck.
Okay, to live downtown and be in the middle of it. There's good reasons to live downtown, I understand that. All right, so it's acknowledged then that there's a shortcoming for these. Can council do? I know one thing is, does that mean a tax hike's needed? Now, some may say, why do we need a tax hike? I mean, shouldn't we be bringing in revenues that we can put toward these salaries? Where's it being spent instead?
Well, this is a place where I agree with the mayor. He campaigned on the idea of it would be unfair to ask citizens to pay for more property tax until we looked at other options. And so he's been working hard with council support to find additional revenue and to make sure we don't have any fat in government. And I think we're going to find out over the next couple months whether those are enough to avoid a property tax rate increase. If you made me bet, I would say that I think the mayor's going to propose a rate increase. I don't know. He hasn't told me, but the numbers don't lie. And even with the pretty significant new revenue he's found from downtown and continued efforts to cut costs, the math just doesn't add up without adjusting the tax rate, which would be the first time since 2012, the second time this century.
Right. So, politicians hate doing that.
Yeah.
All right. So this dovetails with the other topic we'll discuss today, which is the ongoing battle over what's going to happen with soccer, NASCAR, the Fairgrounds. And so we're talking right now just about how these employees aren't getting any money. Now, in your mind, and I understand, for instance, with soccer, okay, the investors and the owners of that are picking up a lot of that tab.
Sure.
But I think a lot of people from the outside looking in will say, I don't care what you tell me, okay? Bringing NASCAR and soccer, initially anyway, is going to cost the city money somehow, some way. It's going to cost us. You may say down the road, the revenues will make up for that, it'll be worth it, and so I'm not going to debate that. But it's going to cost, and I'm with them. I don't care what the mayor or anyone else tells me. Soccer and NASCAR, if it comes, is going to cost at some point the city money. And they're going to say, is that worth more than paying a police officer who puts his life on the line every day an increased wage? Now, is it fair to say the two of those are connected in some way?
I mean, they're connected in some way. It's not a direct dollar-for-dollar relationship in any way, shape, or form. Listen, one of the biggest criticisms I've had of the last 4 years when I was in office is nowhere is it written down what we're trying to incentivize or how we measure it. And that leads to this debate. Because nobody can really look at a piece of paper or a website or a brochure to say, what have we been trying to incentivize and how are we measuring it? Then you get these debates about whether it's successful or whether something's a good investment. I think everybody across the board would agree you can't stop investing.
Right.
We have a 700,000 person city. People are moving here whether we like it or not. We can't stop investing.
It's investing in what, though?
Well, that's the thing where the
infrastructure,
the lack of having a policy about what we want to try to incentivize, what we want to try to invest in, the lack of having a policy that we can look at, debate, agree on, leads to these disagreements. Obviously, we have to do the core things we have to do.
Yeah.
Roads, public safety, public schools. Beyond that, there are very few people who would say, that's it. That's all I want to invest in. I never want to invest in a single economic development thing ever.
Right.
There's very few people that feel that way.
Right.
So it begs the question, how much are we investing in economic development, and on what, and how do we measure it? And those are things where, frankly, there was a game plan 25 years ago, Bredesen administration, Fulton administration, about reinventing downtown. We got to give us all a civic high five for pulling that off, but that game plan needs to go away, and we need a new game plan now that we've built its city, and that game plan doesn't exist, and that's what leads to these debates about what to invest in.
All right, great point. Listen, we'll take a break on that note. When we come back, we've got a lot more to get into, and we've got some calls coming in, 737-7587. Your thoughts, questions for Mr. Mendes, who's in the middle of all of this, and we'll do our very best to give you the information you need right after this. Stay with us.